We begins with a reality every cybersecurity professional recognizes. The hardest decisions are rarely a simple choice between good and bad. They are choices between privacy and protection, transparency and operational risk, immediate relief and long-term consequences, or speed and human control. GenAI intensifies these tensions because it can analyze, generate, predict, and act at scale. So the real question is not only can the system do this, it is should it, under which conditions, and who carries the consequences. This deck treats ethical decision-making like a laboratory. We pause, identify the rights and risks involved, examine who holds power, and ask whether harm can be prevented or repaired. That process matters because technical capability can make an option possible without making it ethically defensible. Throughout the chapter, we will move through 9 recurring dilemmas: practical governance approaches, ethical principles, philosophical lenses, structured decision tools, and 6 cases where the trade-offs become very real. The goal is not a perfect answer every time. It is a transparent, repeatable, and accountable way to reach the best available answer. We maps 9 recurring ethical dilemmas. Privacy versus security asks how much personal information may be collected or monitored to protect people and systems. Vulnerability disclosure asks whether warning the public immediately creates more safety or gives attackers a roadmap before a patch exists. Offensive tactics raise escalation, legality, and collateral damage concerns. Bias asks whether GenAI distributes protection and suspicion fairly. Ransomware creates a brutal tension between restoring essential services and funding future crime. Government cybersecurity tools can protect national security while enabling surveillance or suppression. Information warfare requires countering manipulation without erasing legitimate speech. Ethical hacking must test defenses without crossing privacy, authorization, or legal boundaries. And zero-trust AI must continuously verify outputs and interactions without destroying flexibility or creating excessive monitoring. Pause here. There is no universal setting called ethical. Each dilemma involves different people, harms, time horizons, and power relationships. What remains constant is the need for explicit reasoning, stakeholder involvement, transparency, legal alignment, and continuing review. Context changes the answer, but it never removes the obligation to explain the decision. Privacy protects personal information, communications, choices, dignity, and freedom from discrimination or unwarranted profiling. Security protects systems, networks, and data so that essential services remain confidential, accurate, and available. Both are legitimate goals, and they can pull in opposite directions. More surveillance and data collection may strengthen threat detection while weakening privacy and public trust. Too little visibility may preserve privacy while allowing preventable attacks. Chapter 9 points toward proportionality rather than extremes. Collect only what is necessary. Control access. Use informed consent where appropriate. Communicate clearly about how data is used. Build accountability around surveillance. Collaborate with privacy advocates, law enforcement, policymakers, and the public. And reassess continuously as technology and threats change. The Snowden disclosures are used in the chapter as a powerful reference point because they exposed how national security measures can provoke global debate about the limits of surveillance. The key question is not privacy or security. It is what level of intrusion is necessary, effective, lawful, and proportionate, and how will power be checked. When a vulnerability is discovered, timing changes who carries the risk. Immediate disclosure warns users and supports transparency, but it may reveal technical details that attackers can exploit before a fix exists. Delayed disclosure gives developers time to prepare a patch, yet users may remain unaware that they are exposed. Chapter 9 describes the ethical tension through immediate, delayed, and coordinated approaches. Coordinated disclosure tries to improve the trade-off. Notify affected entities, assess the risk, develop or validate fixes, and release public information in phases. That still requires judgment. How severe is the vulnerability? Is exploitation already occurring? How quickly can a patch be produced and deployed? Which users face the greatest harm? What do law and industry policy require? The chapter also stresses engagement with affected parties and compliance with regulations, which can differ across jurisdictions. So disclosure is not simply a communications decision. It transfers risk between researchers, vendors, users, and the public. A defensible policy must make that transfer visible and set expectations before the crisis arrives. Offensive cybersecurity tactics exist on a widening spectrum. Decoys and deception may stay within controlled environments. Proactive defense hunts threats and disrupts activity. Hacking back crosses into systems controlled by others. Cyberespionage collects information covertly. Disinformation manipulates perception. Sabotage aims to damage capability. As action moves outward, the moral blast radius expands. Attribution may be wrong. Third-party infrastructure may be harmed. A defensive action may escalate conflict. International law and jurisdiction become harder to navigate. In this part, it does not pretend these tools are automatically unethical or automatically justified. It asks for legal frameworks, ethical guidelines, risk assessment, transparency, oversight, and international cooperation. The test should include authorization. Who has the right to act? Necessity. Is offensive action required? Proportionality. Does the response match the threat? Collateral harm. Who else could be affected? And accountability. Who explains and remedies unintended consequences? GenAI adds speed, scale, and adaptability, which can be strategically valuable. But those same qualities compress the time available for moral judgment. More capability demands stronger boundaries before action begins. Ethical choices change when the context changes. Bias in cybersecurity. GenAI asks who receives protection and who receives suspicion, especially when historical data already reflects unequal treatment. Ransomware in hospitals forces an immediate conflict between patient safety and the long-term harm of funding criminals. Government tools may protect national security while enabling surveillance or suppressing dissent. Information warfare creates a tension between countering manipulation and protecting legitimate expression. Ethical hacking strengthens defenses, but only when authorization, consent, privacy, and legal boundaries are respected. Across all of these situations, human rights remain a critical test. Can affected people understand, challenge, or appeal the decision? The same technical objective, detect threats, stop an attack, identify risk, can produce very different ethical consequences depending on who holds power, who bears the cost, and whether alternatives exist. This is why abstract principles need stakeholder analysis and context. Ask who is directly affected, who is indirectly affected, whose voice is missing, which harms are reversible, and whether the decision would still look acceptable if the power relationship were reversed. The figures in this slides gives a simple zero-trust flow. An access request enters zero-trust management and leaves only as verified access. For GenAI, that verification must include more than the user. We also need confidence in the data, the model, the generated output, and the action being requested. Chapter 9 expands the model through 8 controls: asset classification, multi-factor verification, continuous monitoring, secure model training, dynamic policy enforcement, encryption, regulatory auditing, and education with endpoint security. The ethical tension is easy to miss. More verification can improve security while increasing data collection, monitoring, latency, and human intervention. In medical diagnosis, additional review may improve accuracy but introduce human bias. In financial trading, heavy oversight may reduce speed. Continuous monitoring can protect systems while becoming intrusive surveillance. So zero trust is not trust nobody forever. It is verify proportionately and continuously. The framework needs transparency, stakeholder involvement, fairness checks, privacy safeguards, and clear limits on what is collected. Strong security should not quietly become unlimited observation. The table turns ethical intent into 7 operating practices. Establish an ethical governance structure with diverse expertise and authority to review GenAI projects. Embed ethics in design through privacy by design, diverse data, and regular bias assessment. Foster transparency and accountability through documentation, human oversight, and clear ownership. Provide continuous education as privacy law, technology, and societal expectations evolve. Engage stakeholders and publish transparency information, even when that openness invites criticism. Support ethical research and collaborate across disciplines. Finally, maintain regulatory compliance and ethical alignment through regular audits. The chapter is honest about the limitations. These practices require resources, time, expertise, and continuing effort. Different jurisdictions and ethical standards complicate alignment. Public engagement may expose disagreement. Documentation can slow decisions, but that friction is not evidence that ethics has failed. It is often the cost of making hidden assumptions visible. The big idea here is that ethics is a management system, not a one-time approval meeting. It needs governance, evidence, learning, feedback, and adaptation across the entire life cycle. Here he offers 5 ethical tests. Beneficence asks whether the system actively promotes welfare. For example, better threat detection or accessible protection. Non-maleficence asks whether it avoids harm, including false positives, privacy violations, or unsafe automated responses. Autonomy protects consent, data control, and the ability to appeal GenAI-influenced decisions. Justice asks whether benefits and burdens are distributed fairly and whether models discriminate. Transparency and accountability require documentation, explanation, governance, and a visible owner for outcomes. These principles are valuable because they reveal different dimensions of the same decision. A system may improve security overall while disproportionately harming a minority group. It may respect consent while failing to explain a high-impact decision. It may be transparent, but still unsafe. So a strong yes on one principle cannot automatically erase a serious no on another. Teams need to examine conflicts, identify mitigations, and document why the remaining trade-off is acceptable. The principles do not eliminate judgment. They make judgment more complete, more explicit, and easier to challenge. Ethical frameworks change what counts as a good reason. Utilitarianism focuses on outcomes and the greatest overall benefit. Deontological ethics emphasizes duties, rights, and rules that should hold consistently. Virtue ethics asks what a responsible, honest, and courageous professional would do. Ethical egoism considers rational self-interest, while recognizing others' rights to pursue their interests. Care ethics emphasizes relationships, empathy, vulnerability, and the needs of affected people. Contractarianism focuses on fair agreements, consent, transparency, and the expectations that make cooperation legitimate. Principles-based approaches test autonomy, justice, transparency, beneficence, and non-maleficence together. Why use more than one lens? Because each reveals something the others may miss. An outcome-driven analysis may overlook an individual right. A strict rule may ignore urgent human vulnerability. A care-based decision may need stronger consistency and legal grounding. Chapter 9 presents these frameworks as complementary rather than mutually exclusive. A richer ethical examination deliberately asks the same decision several different ways before committing to action. Now we turns ethical reasoning into 10 repeatable steps. Begin with purpose and scope. What is the system intended to do? Identify direct and indirect stakeholders. Examine data collection, privacy, anonymization, and encryption. Review model development, training data sources, and transparency. Test for bias and fairness. Establish security controls and continuous monitoring. Define acceptable use policies and consent expectations. Review performance and gather stakeholder feedback. Prepare incident response strategies that document what happened and carry lessons forward. Finally, reflect and improve as standards, technology, and social expectations evolve. The process can lead to 3 outcomes: proceed, adjust, or halt. That is important because ethical review should have the authority to change the project, not merely describe concerns. The chapter also warns that decision trees cannot capture every nuance and must be updated regularly. People still need training, context, and judgment. Structure supports ethical reasoning. It does not replace it. What it does provide is consistency, evidence, and a shared language for challenging assumptions before capability becomes consequence. In this slide, we pairs 2 complementary approaches. Ethical impact assessment asks who may be affected, how privacy, security, autonomy, and societal norms could change, and what mitigations should be designed before deployment. It requires technical understanding and inclusive stakeholder engagement because benefits and harms may fall on different groups. IEEE ethically aligned design approaches the problem from inside the development process. Ethics should not be added after the system is built. Human values, transparency, trustworthiness, and ethical requirements should shape the system from inception through deployment. The 2 frameworks reinforce each other. Impact assessment looks outward at consequences and affected communities. Ethically aligned design looks inward at how values become requirements, architecture, controls, and practice. Together, they help teams move from reactive correction to proactive responsibility. The word before in the center matters. Once a GenAI cybersecurity system is deployed at scale, harmful patterns, surveillance practices, or unfair decisions may be difficult to reverse. Early ethical analysis creates more options, lower remediation costs, and a better chance of aligning technical progress with human values. The 6 use cases make the frameworks concrete. Predictive policing aims to improve public safety, but can reproduce historical, over-policing, and racial bias. Data breach disclosure protects users while creating a timing risk if attackers receive details before defenses are ready. Hospital ransomware forces a decision between restoring patient care and funding criminal activity. Insider threat detection protects organizational assets, but may intrude on employee privacy, misinterpret unusual behavior, and erode trust. Autonomous cyber defense can respond at machine speed while disrupting third-party infrastructure or applying disproportionate force. Facial recognition supports authentication and security while collecting data from people who may not know or consent, potentially creating pervasive surveillance. Notice the pattern. Every case has a legitimate value and a serious ethical risk. GenAI does not remove the trade-off. It amplifies the decision through scale, speed, prediction, and automation. The practical response is not to reject every use case. It is to apply bias mitigation, transparency, consent, proportionality, oversight, appeal, legal safeguards, continuous assessment, and meaningful community or stakeholder engagement. Let's close by turning the chapter into 8 decision questions. Is the purpose legitimate, lawful, and ethically defensible? Is GenAI and every data element being used actually necessary? Who benefits? Who carries risk? And which stakeholders are missing from the discussion? Are privacy, consent, autonomy, justice, and human rights respected? Is the intervention proportionate to the threat? Can the decision, evidence, and operating limits be explained? Can people intervene, appeal, and obtain a remedy when harm occurs? And will monitoring, incidents, feedback, and changing social expectations alter the system? The answers lead to go, adjust, or stop. A project should not proceed simply because one benefit is compelling or a model performs well. Serious unresolved harm may require redesign or a halt. This gate is synthesized from Chapter 9's dilemmas, principles, frameworks, decision process, and cases. Its purpose is to make the trade-off visible and keep the decision human. GenAI can expand our defensive capability. Ethical reasoning determines whether that capability deserves trust.